And we are going live in 3, 2, 1.5, 1. Okay, hi everybody, welcome. My name is Kathryn Hecht and I am the Executive Director of the Alexander Valley Film Society. And welcome to our Shelter in Place series. It is day 726,000 of Sheltering in Place here in my home office in Cloverdale, California. And we have an incredibly special guest with us today. Actor Ron Livingston has dialed in from Los Angeles, California. And we'll be talking to him in just a minute. A couple of housekeeping before we get started. We are live on Facebook, as far as I know. Our colleague Tess McAfee is staffing the Facebook page right now and is going to make sure that we get eyes and ears on all of your questions for Ron. We'll get to as many of them as we can today. I have a list, a growing list of several questions to go over. So hopefully we'll get to most of them. So before we get started here, let me set the scene. The year was 1999, and I was living with my then boyfriend, Ryan Hecht. I just happen to have his last name now. I was living with my then boyfriend, Ryan Hecht, and our third roommate, Max Barris, who goes by Little Max, was a big fan of Beavis and Butthead. So 1999, there was a new movie coming out called Office Space. And there was one of the actors in it was one of the guys from The Swingers. Great. So Little Max, being the huge Beavis and Butthead fan that he was, insisted that we go to see Office Space, the new Mike Judge film. So I can't remember the theater, but which theater it was, but I remember sitting in the front row of the balcony section in an empty house, seeing Office Space for the first time. And in that theater, I was introduced to these characters.
Hello, Peter. What's happening? We have sort of a problem here. Yeah, you apparently didn't put one of the new cover sheets on your TPS reports. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry about that. I forgot. Yeah. You see, we're putting the cover sheets on all TPS reports now before they go out. Did you see the memo about this? Yeah. Yeah, I have the memo right here. I just forgot. But it's not shipping out till tomorrow, so there's no problem. Yeah. If you could just go ahead and make sure you do that from now on, that would be great. And I'll go ahead and make sure you get another copy of that memo. Okay? Yeah, no, I have the memo. I got it. It's right. Hello, Phil.
Oh my God, it makes me laugh. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I want to welcome Ron Livingston, who introduced us to a whole world. And there he is, Ron. How are you?
Great to see you.
Oh my gosh, so good to see you. When I saw you earlier, you had a little bit more of a COVID beard, but you've trimmed up for the chat today.
I got a little neck beard, self-conscious.
In our technical acumen, or shall I say messiness, I put you on hold while we were watching the opening clip of Office Space, where we meet we meet Peter, and then we meet the boss for the first time. It's our introduction to the TPS reports. And I don't know if you could hear the laughter across America, but I also introduced the clip just to let you know that in 1999, I went and saw that in the theater with my then boyfriend and roommate. And I think we were the only ones in the theater.
Yeah, you were in a very select group.
What was it like for you when that was coming out? Were you aware that it was tepid?
Yeah, I had an idea, just because it got to be like a month before, 3 weeks before, and I wasn't seeing it being advertised. Uh, I could tell it was just kind of that they'd kind of bailed on it. Um, and so then I thought it was going to be bad. I hadn't seen it yet at that point. So I didn't see it until maybe a week before it opened. And when I saw it, I was kind of surprised. I was like, I'm biased, but I think it's really good. I don't know why. I don't know why it's getting dumped. But I guess, everything happens as it's supposed to.
That was really funny. As much as it became a part of the cultural zeitgeist,
Yeah.
it really did have this like flaccid moment of entry, like sorry for the double entendre, but like it was
Sure.
so oddly received.
Yeah, well, I mean, and I get it. It's an odd film. It's not you know what I mean? It's not a movie that's kind of easily, it's not really like a lot of other things. So there's not a whole lot you can point to that says it's the new this. I wasn't really a recognizable name. Jennifer was, but she wasn't in it that much. And so she didn't want to be like in the front of doing all the press for it.
Mhm. Did they want her to do the press?
I mean, they always want you to do press, but it sometimes they want you to do press where it doesn't actually make sense. It doesn't really make sense for her to go out and to talk shows about the movie, and then her fans come to see it, and it's like she's awesome, but she's it's like 3 or 4 scenes or something. So I don't know. Yeah, I think it was just a moment, it worked out because I think it's also the kind of movie that people enjoyed it more, related to it more, in that they got to discover it.
Very
It
well
wasn't
put.
sort of like provided to them. They heard about it from friends. They passed it on to friends. Yeah, and it just kind of it had a slow build that I feel like kept going for about 10 years.
I mean, it's still going. It's so funny when we announced that we were going to be able to talk to you and focus on the film, we had some titterings of, oh, Burger, from the Post-it scene, or the oh, Million Little Things, or this or that. But everybody seems to know the printer death scene and Lumberg and What's Happening. And I mean, it really is, when we talk about what is a cult film, and it really has become part of our vernacular at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty. I attribute it to Mike Judge. He's got such a specific voice. He's not afraid to go subversive. They always doubt him. You know what I mean? they never fail to doubt him, and he's always right.
Have you had or wanted to have an opportunity to work with him again on other projects?
I mean, I'd love to work with Mike, but Mike's a mad genius. That a lot of what he's been doing has been King of the Hill and his sort of TV animated stuff. I love Silicon Valley, but I don't know. The other thing is it's weird when somebody shows up from 4 movies ago and all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm doing a guest star. Like there's something that's weird about that. I always kind of liked that he kind of kept the worlds, I don't know, kind of true to themselves.
I like that. That's a really nice way of putting that. I always ask my husband, I always say, do you think, not in particular to you guys, but I always say when I see people on screen, do you think they're friends? Do you think these people are friends?
Right.
And I look back at your work and I look at Band of Brothers, and I mean, clearly that's where you met Rick Gomez, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean,
dear friend.
Yeah. I mean, we create families as we go, throughout our careers.
Absolutely. I mean, but it's, it's like Rick, the Gomez's, that's kind of rare actually. 'Cause like those are some of my dearest friends ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think usually on a job, there's a couple of people that you like and you hang out with for a while, and then it's time to go off, and you're excited when you're excited. It's like going to a high school reunion or something when you see each other again at a film festival or something, or you get to work together a second time. But it's pretty rare, especially as you get older, that that you're like, oh, I'm going to change the structure of my life to see a ton of this person. But the Gomez's, that's I love them to death.
I do too. Jenny and I have actually talked about, and Jenny, for those of you who are watching, is married to Rick. And Jenny is on the board of directors for the Alexander Valley Film Society, and an incredible force, and one of my best friends up here. And we've talked about how it gets harder to make friends the older you get. And I think that's a part of it. And it's so funny. I wasn't even thinking of making the segue, but when I think about your swingers days, and I think about you kind of, you hopped from one really culturally important film or series to another for like 6 years or so.
Yeah,
So
I had a lucky run on that, because you think they're all going to be great, I feel like you think they're all going to be amazing, and they're not always, but I feel like there's three we were talking about, the notifications, and here they come. I don't know how to shut them off. I wish I did.
Nope. Here it is. It's how we make the sausage.
One of the viewers knows how to shut off the email dings. Let me know.
Let's see. I don't know if we have anything yet, but I'm sure something will come in. Oh, well, someone said, will you ever get a social media account? I don't know if that's applicable here, but
now we see why. Right?
But so, yeah, let's go back there just a second. So, because it's also closely related. It's so funny. I told you I was talking to Steve Zahn last week, and me personally, I have such a personal experience having been an actor at the time when he was in New York. I was in New York and I saw him in plays, and how affected, he was such a big part of those salad days for me.
Yeah.
And then seeing Swingers and like how exciting and different that movie was. And then going into Office Space, which we thought was funny in 1999. And then it seemed like everybody else, as you said, started to discover it. And so we almost felt like in some ways, your casting in the last 20 years, 25 years has been like our growing up. You know what I mean? It's like you're playing the everyman in each part of our generation's learning curve.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I had never thought of it that way, but because for me, it's definitely, it's got that kind of growth. It kind of keeps it interesting. It's like, even if you could play 20-year-olds forever, it'd get boring eventually. So it's kind of great every 5 or 10 years to kind of have a new phase of life to sort of try to crack. Okay, what are the stories that I can tell about this, about this time? I got to see if I can get these notifications.
Let's see if you go. Are you on a Mac or a PC?
I'm on a Mac.
Do you have your little bar on the bottom, like your dock on the bottom?
Is it on the settings?
Yeah, go to System Preferences.
Okay.
And then, so I'm opening mine so I can see it. And then if you go to, there's got to be a notifications in here.
Oh, notifications, I see.
Notifications, yeah, okay.
Bang. Turn on Do Not Disturb. Let's Do Not Disturb. There we go. Let's see if that works.
Why not?
See, you learned something.
See, hey, we're all about keeping it real. So here's a question. Actually, you know what? Before I get to that question, I have something relevant to what we've been talking about. So here, okay, you're we're going to go back and talk about Swingers in just a second, because there's something really meta that kind of happened this week, because we watched Goodfellas on Wednesday as we had a Netflix watch party. We'll get back to that. But here you are kind of going through these early phases in your career. And by the way, did you go to Yale? Do I have that right?
Yes, I did.
Undergrad, right?
Undergrad, class of 89.
Whoa. Whoop, whoop. And okay, so you go from Yale. Did you go right into the city at that point, or did you go to LA?
No, I skipped the city. I went to Chicago. I started out, I did 3 years in Chicago.
Why Chicago?
I grew up in Iowa, so it was kind of moving back within striking distance of home. It seemed Chicago was it was a really exciting theater town at the time. You know, Steppenwolf had just kind of made itself known nationally, and
Yeah.
there were a lot of great playwrights writing out of Chicago, and it had this kind of, I don't know, it just kind of had this sort of energy that I got excited about. And it seemed like it was more affordable, and that there was a great comedy scene, and, you know, blah blah blah. So and I loved it. It's funny. I probably lived in LA. I lived in Chicago for 3 years, and then I was in LA for probably 15 or 20 before I started to say, I can't really call myself a Chicago guy anymore, because I really only lived there for a little while. But
you can on your cap.
I thought of myself that way. You know what I mean? It's such a, it's kind of, those are such defining years when you get out of the, you know, you go to school and you have some leeway, but the experience is very much curated for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then those first few years out of school, it's like, you know, it's like the open sandbox. You can go anywhere and do anything you want. And I think those are the years when you really start to make the decisions about who you are.
I am so right there with you. And I think I'm a couple years behind you in school. I actually went to school with Kirk Acevedo.
Hey, all right.
Yeah, he was a couple years ahead of me, but then I graduated in 96 behind him. But those years you're talking about, so this is what I want to get to. Somebody asked us about like your favorite part of filming. And I'm always going to be interested in the existential stuff, like that kind of awareness that we have as it's going on. But as you start to make these steps through these early films, you're still in your salad days for the most part, right? Now, so now you're in LA and you're starting to make these films. On Office Space, now you're with Jennifer Aniston, who at that point is already America's sweetheart, right?
Yeah.
So she walks onto set, you're having scenes with her. What's the most fun about that? Or what is something fun you remember from those shooting that film as it relates to that time? Like the eye-opening parts of it and being with major star and.
You know, it's funny. It's funny. I think it's not what most people would think. Swingers was a really weird experience in that we were all just so excited to be making a movie. You know, we're at that place in our career where it was like, oh my gosh, we get to make a movie. But I didn't have any inkling that anyone was ever going to see it. You know what I mean? I thought we were making a movie like the only other movie I'd made, where it was going to go to festivals and play for 2 nights, and then I was going to have a good piece of tape to show people for stuff that I wanted to audition for. So there was a real looseness, and we all, we all knew each other. Those guys, we'd been hanging out, and that one was just a really organic, fun kind of thing. Office Space was like the huge break.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a couple of TV shows in between. I think I did a movie or two, independent movie or two. But Office Space was like, oh, this is the big time. And that was a lot of pressure, I definitely felt a lot of pressure on that. So some of that, like, oh, we're on the big stage now, wasn't actually the most enjoyable part of it.
Oh, I'm
That was kind of
sure.
the stuff that I had to sort of try to put out of my mind and
Yeah.
not really think about. The stuff that was really exciting was just the creative, like once you kind of get rid of that and you're just there on the day with the cameras and trying to figure out the scene and coming up with stuff. And you know, and Mike is so great and such a genius. Uh, you know, everybody in that cast, it's so will surprise you. You know, everybody's always doing stuff that surprises you at how good it is, and nobody was phoning it in on that job too. Everybody took that job really seriously. So that's the part that I remember about having a great time.
That is so rad. I feel like that's an insight I haven't heard before. And I love to hear that nobody phoned it in, because I think I'm going to pull up a picture really quickly. I think some of the funniest moments in that film are obviously the supporting characters.
Mm-hmm.
Let me pull up Diedrich.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, this guy has, and talk about meta. We just had a Q&A with him the other day, or not with us, but through the first National Film Festival Day, and Phoenix, Oregon, film that he's in. His work in Office Space is hysterical.
It's brilliant. And he came in with that. He had that look. He's like, I think the guy needs to look like this. I remember him saying he wanted to look like somebody that listens to the Allman Brothers. It was such a great sensibility, you know what I mean? And it runs kind of counter to a lot of the other sensibilities in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he could be a dick and be really affable and like, you know, it was great, you know.
Yeah, and
watch your cornhole is
said with all the seriousness, by the way.
Yeah, said with love. Said
Yeah.
like that's the most loving, that's the most caring, you know, moment of the whole thing. Yeah.
You know, I've seen the movie 20,000 times, and I watched it again last night, and I was like, with some anticipation, oh God, I hope it's as good as I remember it. It is a tight 90-minute film.
Yeah, I think
there
so.
is nothing wasted.
Not wasted space in there. It holds up. It really holds up.
So Hillary from Sonoma says, how do you keep a straight face in some of those scenes, and how much of them were improvised?
We had a little bit of improv, less than you would think. We had the luxury of actually rehearsing it for about a week before we did it. So a lot of the kind of improv, or like, what if somebody says this, or what if somebody says that, happened at that point, and we hammered it out and, you know, got it in the script. And then I think people riffed. I came up with a couple of things, but I didn't, you know what I mean? I don't generally go completely off script. If the script is good, I feel like that's a, you know, you're walking away from something hoping you find something as good.
Yeah. Anything of note that you that came from
it was my idea to gut the fish. I wanted to gut the fish.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, I had a couple lines here and there. I won't put my name on them because I'm sure the editors had a couple of good acting moments too that I get credit for. So
well played. Well played. I think, if memory serves, at some point Michael Bolton, I think the actor who played Michael Bolton,
yeah,
came up with "No Talent Ass Clown."
Yes.
On the spot or something like that.
Yeah, I remember the conversation where that was. I mean, he was hashing around. He had all these names, and for some reason, like, yeah, Mike would just stand there and kind of listen to everything, and then if you could get Mike to laugh, then that's the one, you know.
So good. So Lexi Hubbard has written in and asked who was in charge of the awesome soundtrack.
Mike was involved. I think he may have had a music supervisor that I'm forgetting to credit, but Mike's a musician. Mike played bass in like, you know, bar bands for a while, and and he was really into, you know, that early sort of gangster rap scene at a time. I mean, that's the Office Space is the first time that I was even aware that existed. You know, and David, Ajay, and Mike are, you know, they're talking in, you know, groups and what he's up to these days, and I was a little bit along for the ride for that, but he that was him, and they fought him on it too. The studio, right up until you know, they just did not want to let him have that soundtrack. And he kind of went to the mat for it, and thank God he did.
Thank God he did. I mean, that's a character in the film.
Yeah, it's not as good a film without that. You know what I mean? If you put like a safe little hijinks, you know, comedy thing under it, then it's just like, okay, it's subversive. It's you know what I mean? It's like totally. It's an angry subvert. It like gives the movie an energy that we don't necessarily have to earn with the acting and the writing. You know what I mean? Because the energy's there in the music.
Again, very well said. It's so played out in Michael Bolton's opening scene in the car with the gangster rap, and then, you know, locking that door when the black guy walks by.
Yeah, sure.
Oh God, it's so there's something about that that's just so finger on the pulse of that time.
Mm-hmm.
So one of our most intrepid supporters, Ann McKenzie, loves this film and loves you, and she wrote to us earlier in the week and asked, where is the sequel? And albeit I'm sure it's been complicated and asked a gazillion times, doesn't the current crisis seem like a good moment to create one? Has there been anything about a sequel?
No, there's never been anything about a sequel. I think it's like Mike, he's got plenty of money, right? Mm-hmm. He's doing all right. So I think there was never a feeling that he was going to do a sequel just to do a sequel. I don't know what a natural sequel to that would be. Like, I don't know how you get the characters interacting with each other again. The whole you know, point of the movie is basically that Peter gives himself permission to escape all of that.
Yeah.
So to like start up another movie and go, oh, I'm back. I took another, you know what I mean? It just, I don't think it would have made any sense. I feel like, you know, he, Extract was probably the closest thing to a sequel to Office Space. I think they share a lot.
Yeah. You know, what I was going to say is that it's an interesting point to that. It's the characters were given the full arc, and then Milton burns it all down, and there's nothing to go back to.
Yeah. Yeah.
But speaking of him, let's take a look at this guy. Another unbelievable addition to the film from Stephen Root.
Yes. Those glasses, man. Those glasses were no joke, and I think they give me terrible headaches to wear. But you know, again, and I think a lot of that was him. He came in with that, and it's brilliant. It's just so brilliant.
I didn't know that he was that versatile an actor until I had seen that, and then
Steven's a guy that, like, I swear to this day, I'll see somebody in a movie and go, oh my God, who's that guy? That guy's really, why do I not know? Oh, it's Stephen Root. Like, I'll see him in something and I don't recognize him because he really does transform.
Yeah, he does. And his little through line kind of tells the story of the entire experience. So we have something here. It says, Jeff and I are watching from the garden. We lived office space working in IT in San Francisco and Silicon Valley in the 90s. We were fans of the movie when it was released and still are. Could you please talk about Defying Gravity at some point, another movie show the studios didn't understand but the fans loved?
Defying Gravity was my sci-fi astronaut show.
Mm-hmm.
It was based, there was a BBC series that we based it off of. And the idea was like, yeah, astronauts traveling through the solar system, and there's a beacon on, and I really enjoyed doing it, because it was, it was my astronaut show. I got to be an astronaut,
That's awesome.
And I don't think that was one where there's no bad guy in that. I think they did that as a model where they made the show without having a network.
Mm-hmm.
They went with I think Canada CTV. I think Germany. They had a partner in Germany, and they figured we're going to make it and then we'll sell it in the States. And when they made it, they went to sell it in the States. Nobody wanted to buy it because at that time the networks wanted to buy shows that their own studios were producing, because then they would make twice the money. So, so then they ended up saying, all right, well, we'll sell it to whoever wants it. And so it was, I liked it. They don't, like I say, they don't always hit. They don't always strike. I think everything's going to go to the Smithsonian, and, and most of them don't.
Is there a particular film or series or an episode of a series that really stands out for you as something that is essential Ron Livingston work?
I mean, it kind of shifts, it changes as I change. I try to put that in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything I do, I try to make it about, have a lot of me and what I'm going, what I think is important at the moment. And so I don't know. I don't think I have a good perspective on that.
What's interesting about that is one of our board members, Renee Finelli, asked us or asked to ask you your roles, kind of hearkening back to this everyman thing that's going on. And I think even I've read about some of the casting procedure and angst that was going on for Mike Judge with Office Space, is he didn't want somebody who was, superstar power. Like he was talking to Matt Damon and he was like, this is not the right guy for this. And and there is something very relatable about the roles you take. And is that something that you seek out? Is that something that's coming to you?
A lot of it is you just take the best thing that's available to you at the moment. But I always kind of had I tried to always have a guiding, getting that thing again. I always tried to have a guiding principle of, I don't want to do the thing I just did. And sometimes that guiding principle gets you in trouble because you get a lot of momentum in a certain direction and people are ready to like go, okay, we're going to take this and, do great. And I'm like, I want to do drama now. I want to do, I want to do something different. And then they look at you like you're crazy, which you probably are. But I don't think I would have done it any other way because it really allowed me to, I don't know, it keeps it fresh. There's new challenges. I was trying to do new genres. I was trying to do new stuff. Some of it worked, some of it didn't.
Yeah. Ron, not for nothing, but in preparation for our chat, I started watching Million Little Things, which typically is a little too soapy for my taste. Yeah. But there's something in there that, man, you really let the camera start to see you suffering. And that's like a real middle-aged, God, like crisis. but it just feels really real and relatable. So congratulations on that. I mean, I know it's incredible to have a whole show around you that you're not in all the time.
You're not wrong, yeah.
But it's still good to see that. Someone has written in, oh, you know what? So we have a family here, the Mandryer family from Healdsburg, wrote in with a lot of questions about Band of Brothers. Their daughter Sophia got to watch Office Space for the first time in preparation for our conversation today. And I think she just wrote in, I have some questions here about Band of Brothers, but she's actually written in a new question. She said, my dad introduced me to Band of Brothers, and now every night I ask if we can watch it. What was your favorite scene to shoot, and what was the scariest scene?
Scariest scene, well, there's two scenes that I would call scary for different reasons. One was the scene where I got hoisted up on a crane about 80 feet in the air, like clipped to a parachute, and then sort of dropped on a line. But and that's a little weird to be swinging from a crane 80 feet in the air. Going, okay, I really hope these carnies have this figured out, But the one that was probably even scarier than that was there's a scene in episode 5 where Winters is trying to finish his report, and I come in and we meet Private Zelensky. And that one just made me nervous because Tom Hanks was directing. It was one of the first scenes I did where it's just basically Damien and I and this, other actor, Adam, and Tom Hanks, and that was scary. I won't lie, that was really kind of scary. He was not only sort of an icon of mine, but he was a person that I'd been low-key ripping off in my sitcom career. So
that's great.
Yeah, I'd sort of been borrowing all his shtick. So I was like, well, he's gonna see through all that because he did it. So but
did you ever talk to him about it?
I never really talked to him about that. No, I don't think so.
Let's send him this video right now.
Sure. All right, I'm just glad he's feeling better.
No doubt.
Yeah. But no, that's it. I think, man, there's so many scenes. I can't pick a scene that I love. There's so many scenes. I love the scenes with a lot of guys in them. Like there's one where I'm reading the mail.
Yeah.
I love that scene just because it's like those guys and everybody, we'd been there for a while. So it just got laughy, that scene was laughy.
Somebody did ask us about the impact, like what was the broader impact on your life from doing Band of Brothers?
Oh, huge. That Band of Brothers, that was probably the most life-changing job I ever did. Other than, I guess, the standoff where I met my wife, that was life-changing. But I think as far as like just personal, I met some of my dearest friends in the world. It was 9 months in London. We kind of went from being sort of fresh-faced to being sort of grizzled veterans by the end of it. I think I called people sir for the first time in my life for 5 years after I got back from that, just because I couldn't stop doing it. Those things can have a profound effect on you.
One of the other questions that we received was about meeting the veterans that you all were playing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I mean, it was extraordinary because you've read the book and you know these guys' exploits before you see them, and then you see them, and then there's just this little guys, And I didn't have the opportunity to meet Lewis Nixon. I did get to know his wife really well. She lived in Sherman Oaks and was really generous about, as I was kind of preparing, getting ready to go over it, about sort of opening up her life and talking about her husband and showing me his books and his, and like his letters and so that was, so I sort of feel like I almost met him. Yeah, but no, those guys were, it was kind of incredible. And it was incredible to see what a family they are together. They still were, after all these years. A lot of them went to the reunions a lot. Some of them were there that hadn't been to the reunions in forever. But they were thick as thieves.
And speaking about reunions, what about your own? Are there casts that get back together, or scene partners, or?
The Band of Brothers, this is the first year because of coronavirus that Band of Brothers, the cast hasn't had a reunion. We've done a reunion every year ever since. And this spring was the first one where we had to call it off.
Bummer.
Yeah, I think it was the 20th too. So,
oh gosh.
But we'll be back next year. So, other than that, no, it's pretty rare. I think Office Space did a 20th anniversary screening in Austin, Texas, and that was great because I think I hadn't seen some of those guys for five or 6 years.
Did that happen at South by?
I don't think it was at South by. I think it was a standalone thing that happened, I want to say, in the summer.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I could be wrong about that.
So would you say that you and Tom Hanks are friends?
I'm an admirer of Tom Hanks. I think, Tom Hanks is friends with everyone. Honest to God, there's not a human in the world that Tom Hanks won't be friends with. I think I would be closer friends with Tom if I could ever get over the starstruck thing with him, which I'm not sure I ever will. But yeah.
He's a special guy. He's a special guy. I'm with you. I'm glad that he's feeling better, both he and Rita.
Yeah.
That's good news. So, we're almost 45 minutes in. There are questions coming in about Flair and TPS reports and Lumberg and the O-Face. But, I want to just wrap up. Before we go, I just want to check in about like where you are, how you're doing, how is your family doing, what is life like for you right now?
I mean, we're doing great. We're pretty well set up. Nobody's sick. The most challenging thing is because we have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. So the most challenging thing is trying to do remote learning with the 7-year-old. All of a sudden, I'm an elementary school teacher. Who knew I was going to be an elementary school teacher? I would have studied harder if I thought I was going to have to do that.
All right.
So that's keeping that train going is really the only thing that I'll be looking for. But a lot of it has been, kind of amid the tragedy, that a lot of it's sort of been a gift because I feel like we've really unplugged from a lot of things that we didn't need to be plugged into, and just forced to spend a lot of time together with the people you love the most.
Yeah, boy, I hear that. So we're going to do, and by the way, I know you know this, but some of our viewers may not know that Ron's better half, Rosemary DeWitt, is going to sit down with us next Sunday and have a conversation, which is so exciting. And on that note, I did ask Ron about this before we went live today. And I think it was Jimmy Kimmel, a Jimmy Kimmel interview. Speaking of Rosemary, and I think this speaks a lot to your integrity, Ron. Jimmy, the two of you were talking, and it might have been one of the anniversaries of Office Space or something like that. And Jimmy asked you, he acknowledged, and I don't remember him saying Rosemary's name, but he said, your wife is also an actress. And you said, yes. And he said, does your career take precedent in your family? And you paused for just a split second and said, well, it shouldn't. My wife is twice the actor I am, but She's a
That's
woman.
being generous to myself, by the way, actually, twice. You could say 4 or 5, really, and I think it'd be just as close.
Look, you know, in our last few minutes, could you just tell us a little bit about navigating some of that as a family man in the business and having family in the business and how that works for you?
Yeah, it's not just really navigating within the family. It's navigating it just in the business and in Hollywood. And there's the stuff that we've sort of always known, which is Hollywood doesn't Hollywood doesn't give women's careers the precedence that it ought to. I think, I don't know if it's because they don't know how to tell the stories, or it's just it's been a boys, we could do a whole panel on that. And that's really hard. You gotta sort of sort that out. So we're always trying to make decisions about what's going to be best with the family, and also what's going to keep us, feeling happy and fulfilled, and how do we create our own work, and how do we, but no, I mean, if things were fair, I'd work half as often as she did, and she'd get paid 2 or 3 times as much. But they're not, so it doesn't. That's not generally how it shakes out. Right now, it's flat even because nobody's working, nobody's doing anything. So
this is a good point. Although I will say,
a great balance at the moment.
True. I will say it did take a pandemic for me to finally get my talk show. So, okay, we're going to wrap up here with a lightning round. Ron Livingston, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Woods or beach?
Woods.
Pizza or pasta?
Pasta.
Favorite class in high school?
Geometry.
Wow. Okay. Lord of the Rings or Avengers?
Stop. Lord of the Rings.
Sorry.
I heard Lord, and I could have hit the buzzer right there. Yeah, big nerd.
Ron, this has been such a treat. And I said it before, but on behalf of everybody who's written a question or is just checking in and watching us today, thank you for just being some of the glue that's holding our community together today. We wish you and your family the best. And if the opportunity should present itself, you must come visit and bring some work up here, and we'll just celebrate with you all over again.
I'd love to. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And we'll see the rest of you next week with Rosemary DeWitt. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.
Bye.